is the podcast that must not be named. I am Melissa.
I am Luke.
And we are discussing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, chapter number 15, Aragog. This chapter was 18 pages and is 5.28% of the book. Luke, tell us about Aragog.
A beautiful summer has started, which feels out of place at Hogwarts. The hospital wing is closed off to visitors for safety reasons. Harry reflects that Dumbledore's advice is more confusing than Hagrid's, even though no spiders have been seen. Harry also finds it troublesome that all students must be chaperoned between classrooms by professors. Malfoy is on top of the world with the suspension of Dumbledore, and claims that Snape would be a wonderful successor. In Herbology, Ernie apologizes for doubting Harry, since he would never attack Hermione. This apology is a bit too little too late for Ron, but Harry lets Ernie know that he does not believe that Malfoy is the heir either. Harry points out to Ron a single-file marching group of spiders in the greenhouses heading for the Forbidden Forest, and that they will have to take the invisibility cloak to go follow them. Lockhart doesn't understand why everyone is still frightened since the culprit, Hagrid, has been apprehended and removed. And Harry decides to go into the forest that night. Later that night, Harry and Ron sneak out under the invisibility cloak and take Fang with them into the forest. They find some spiders and begin following them. Their forest tour guides lead them off the path, and the boys are spooked by none other than Mr. Weasley's Ford Anglia, which the forest has turned wild. Quickly after this reunion, enormous spiders the size of horses appear and snatch Harry and Ron up to take them back to their nest. Here, we meet their leader, Aragog, who was the monster, quote-unquote, Hagrid was caught with in Riddle's memory. Aragog provides much information which exonerates Hagrid and offers some insight into the true monster of Slytherin, though he won't say what it is called or anything else useful about it. Aragog also mentions that the girl that was killed last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened was found in a bathroom. After a nice chat, Aragog gives the order for his large spider family to eat the boys, and the car comes zooming in to the rescue. Harry, Ron, and Fang escape in the car, and once back in their dormitory, Harry realizes that the girl Aragog mentioned just might be Moaning Myrtle.
All right, we had a few new characters introduced. We met Aragog, the giant, ancient, blind spider, and his wife.
Yeah, and his whole family.
And his entire family.
None
the
were
wife
named,
was
other
named.
than, but we did meet a lot of characters without names.
And
they were speaking parts.
They were speaking parts, so they got paid more than just extra fees.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mossag, that's the wife.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new location, Aragog's nest, within the Forbidden Forest.
And a revisited traveling location of Mr. Weasley's car.
Also true.
I'll just say revisited location.
Or a revisited character. So has it become a character now?
I think it's a character at this point.
So technically, well, I guess it became a character in the Whomping
which we
Willow.
didn't include then, so as a character, so...
As a re-shout out.
Well, I think it's actually become... So we've got Mr. Weasley's wild car is the character that we were introduced to this chapter.
Because it's been personified.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
All right. And our magicabulary is Lumos. We finally get the spell that brings light.
Yeah, Lightbringer.
Which is good. And I'm going to say it wrong because I always do. Abyssinian shrivel figs?
That's it. Yep, Abyssinian shrivel figs.
Nice. I knew the shrivel figs. The
Abyssinian. Do you remember what they were?
I'm assuming it's something in herbology class.
Yeah, they were pruning them.
There you go.
Yeah, they were pruning the Abyssinian shrivel figs.
What is a shrivel fig?
I don't know. Some kind of fig plant.
You're supposed to know these things, Luke. So then we're going to get into our illustration discussion. Luke, can you describe the illustration for us?
Yeah, so we see a crescent moon kind of peering through the dark Forbidden Forest trees. They're real tall and dark, and a large domed spider web. Do we see anything? And one little spider. Is there something on the back right? Is there something else behind one of those trees?
Maybe some rocks.
Some rocks. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be the car or anything.
No, I think it's just rocks. Giant spider web, which looks, quite frankly, like one of those, not like a full-on camping tent, but like the canopies that people put up when it's really hot out.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it looks like, except it's a
yeah.
They're
They're just lounging in the forest.
Right.
They got their nice clearing. Let's get a little shade.
Little spot for a campfire.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
They're set and ready to
And
go.
fire, the smoke would go right up through that. So that's a pretty good
Good
design.
ventilation.
Yeah, good ventilation.
All right, let's get into talk about your thoughts about this chapter. You have a lot.
So typically when we do these, we do the executive summary. You typically have less notes. I had a lot of notes.
Wow,
this time.
I'm pretty impressed.
So my first note, the chapter opens up with saying that the hospital wing was barred. It's closed since the killer might come back and finish these people off. Does that seem silly to you?
Well, I would say they have no more chance of getting attacked than how many people are in the hospital wing, by the way? 4 at this point?
See, we've got the cat, we've got Colin Creevy, we've got Nearly Headless Nick, we've got Justin Finch Fletchley, we've got Hermione, and we've got the Ravenclaw prefect. So we're at 6. I don't think
6, but one's a ghost and one's a cat. So people-wise,
So
there's
4.
4 people. That's what I
Yes.
thought. Okay. We're talking 4 to 6 beings petrified versus hundreds and hundreds of people walking around all the time. Don't you think the hundreds and hundreds of people walking around are more of a target than the people already petrified?
especially since every victim that was petrified happened in the corridor. Like every single one of them.
When they were either alone or with just one other person. in,
Right?
like,
I
a
mean,
small
they were
group.
all in the corridors.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the more dangerous place. And if we look at Mrs. Norris, the first victim, she's been in there for months and months. Like, it would have been pretty easy to come and finish the job
Right.
over the past 6 months. Like,
Right. Because we're talking, this is what? April, May now. It's
well,
gotta
they
be,
said it's
'cause-
the beginning of summer, so it's
Oh,
got to be
yeah.
into June.
Into June. So that was Halloween. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. It's more than 6 months.
Like, I just don't understand, like, why now? I guess because Dumbledore's not there and they think, oh, free reign might be happening. I could maybe be justified on that, but still, like, it just seems like this is the point where you close the hospital wing? Like, now? I don't know. It just seems silly to me.
I'm with you.
So, there was also another line right around that time where it said, "There was barely a face to be seen in the school that didn't look worried and tense, and any laughter that rang through the corridors sounded shrill and unnatural, and was quickly stifled." That sounds pretty eerie. I like the way she describes that feeling of, this large castle with these large stone corridors. Like, it's kind of cold on its own, and I think typically it's the fun of the school that maybe makes it feel really warm and welcoming and homely for everyone there. But when that's gone, like, it's got to be extra just stark in there. I don't know. I like the way that she described that.
I agree. I think it definitely feeds into the idea of it being not your typical Hogwarts end of year. Because in the last book, as Harry and Ron and Hermione were getting worried about Fluffy and all of that, it was just the 3 of them being
Right.
worried.
Yeah, they were the only ones apparently that knew anything.
It's nice that other people know things.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of an overall tone of everybody's worried.
Yeah.
Which they should be.
And at least they're not pointing at Harry again anymore, so that's nice too.
Also true.
So he doesn't feel singled out. He can actually see that other people are worried too.
Right. That's funny. Next thought, Luke. What else you got?
So my next note, Harry seemed to think that Dumbledore's advice last chapter was less useful than Hagrid's. I know we kind of touched on that at the end of last chapter. What are your thoughts on that now?
Well, I can absolutely see how a 12-year-old could say, follow spiders. That's a direction I can follow.
Right.
Help will be given for those who ask. I don't even know what help you mean and who's asking and who do I ask it
Yeah,
to.
and he was asking himself that. He was like, who am I supposed to ask?
Right. Like, how does this apply to me? I see no
Right.
practical applications of this advice.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
It's just, I think it's funny that Harry seems the same. He sees the same issues that we saw with it.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
know.
good to see that he is getting, some mental power behind it. He's not just running into something blindly. He's questioning it a bit. So we also find out that McGonagall is the interim headmaster. We knew that she was the deputy headmaster, so I think it's fitting. It's just nice to see her getting her promotion after all these years. I'm teasing.
I know, right? Well, she was the deputy, so I mean,
Right.
it can't be anybody else. It
Right.
had to be her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's part of the description of
Right.
the deputy headmistress.
It's like a vice
role. Right.
president.
In, in times where headmaster can't be present, the castle is yours kind of thing.
It's like He just called him number 1. Captain Picard would hand it off to Riker.
Riker, yep.
Yes, Star Trek reference. I'm so proud of me for pulling that name out.
Yeah, it's like the co-captain or all that.
You have the bridge.
Right, the bridge is yours. Yep, Sir Patrick Stewart.
I love Sir Patrick Stewart.
We have more smirking Slytherins.
They smirked again.
3 times in a very, very close succession.
Were they all over their face or were they just smirking?
I think they just smirked. I don't think it was all over their face necessarily. I like to imagine that it was. We just had to fill in that blank.
Okay. Well, she has us set up for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's...
Preemptively smirking all over the face.
At this point, can anyone smirk not all over their face? I think that's unreasonable for us to ask.
Can you partially smirk?
Sure. I think so. An example,
would that be a smir?
A smir? A sm? An example that I could think of would be like Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones. I think she kind of partial smirks a lot.
She does.
So that's like my quick visual image that I'm thinking of. That's the actress who played Marjorie Tyrell.
Yes.
For anyone.
She also was in the Hunger Games.
Yeah, she was. Something with a Z.
Fabulous
right?
in them.
She was also Anne Boleyn in the show The Tudors.
Yeah, she's kind of amazing.
She is on the up and up, as they say.
What was her actress? What was the actress's name again? I'm going to look it up.
Natalie Dormer.
That's right. I'm going to look up her character name in Hunger Games because she shaved half her head for it. And I thought that was like awesome.
Zai something. I'm thinking.
No, it's Cressida.
Yeah, I was thinking that character type with their guns tucked out. They're like the Zai something box or something.
Oh yeah, no.
Okay. Ernie apologizes quite formally to Harry. We know he's a little bit pompous, Well, no, that was Justin Finch Fletchley that was really pompous, wasn't it?
No, Ernie was pompous. Justin Finch Fletchley was the one who was like, my mom realized it was really good to have...
That's right.
Well,
I thought it was both of them a little bit.
It's kind of both of them. Like
it's
Ernie
a Hufflepuff thing, I guess.
I don't know. That's a really good question because Justin was pompous in a I was going to Eton way, but Ernie reminds me of like your typical 1800s handshaking politician.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna puff up my chest and talk to you real
Teddy
nice.
Roosevelt, like a big burly.
Yeah, that's how I envision Ernie Macmillan.
But not like a jerk about it.
Well, he might be behind closed doors.
I think he has the capacity to,
and I think I attribute that to him because of the image of him being an a late 1800s, early 19th or 20th century politician, but he may not be because again, it's Hufflepuff,
right?
Like they're supposed to be naturally friendly,
hardworking, and loyal,
right?
So he's been loyal to Justin this whole time, and now he realizes that,
and he owned his mistake.
That's what I was saying. He realized he was wrong. He was playing the cards that looked most obvious. It was the prime suspect. Like, I don't know. Maybe he passed judgment a little too early on Harry, so that could be a problem. But he also, like you said, admitted his mistake. Yep. and owns up to it.
I will say those Hufflepuffs, they it doesn't, for as much trouble as people have given them in the media and, online, they don't do anything I'm not saying they don't do anything. They don't do anything in the books that make you dislike them. There are things to dislike about Slytherins. And depending on your view, there might even be things to dislike about Gryffindors and sort of their head first into things without thinking. Right. But Hufflepuffs are just genuinely for the most part,
for the ones that we've seen. I mean, right now it's only these 3 we see: Hannah Abbott, but and the 2 boys. But they seem like good people who screw up, but then they seem like normal people. Yeah, absolutely.
They're just people.
Yeah,
they're nice people.
We like you, Hufflepuffs. So I think maybe we should revisit this in our 5-chapter recap coming up again, but. Werewolves in the forest are mentioned again. There are so many mentions of werewolves in the forest. And we've touched on this. It's just ridiculous.
I have the same note. And my note is, shouldn't Ron, by this point, with as many werewolf mentions as we've had, have a decent enough knowledge of werewolves to know by now that they aren't always around, but only there at the full moon?
They're there for maximum 3 nights every month.
Right.
That's it.
Maybe.
That's a max. I mean, and sometimes it's just 2.
Right.
And sometimes full moons are up in the sky in the daytime.
Spoiler alert, it comes back again in another future chapter. In this book, there's another mention of werewolves. Watch
Is there?
For it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
kind of ridiculous.
That's what I'm saying. Like, come on, JK.
You need a new horror movie character.
Right. Like,
what else could live in the forest? Right.
That would be reasonable. There might be a
Because it's
Sasquatch out there. Reasonable.
I almost feel like she's using the term werewolf
There might
like
be
we
giant
would think
spiders
of.
out there.
Hey, look.
Reasonable.
True.
Yeah, the centaurs might be evil. Reasonable. The werewolf thing, and maybe she's doing it because it's kind of
Aren't they in Scotland?
Yeah.
Couldn't there be like a loch monster?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
Year-round werewolves living in the Forbidden Forest?
Unreasonable.
Truth statement.
So let's move on from there. We'll revisit again, I'm sure.
Oh, werewolves.
Lockhart is aghast that people are still terrified of the monster, when clearly the culprit has been caught. He just goes on and be like, oh, trust me, I think I know a little bit more about Hagrid's arrest than you do.
Yeah.
And, the minister wouldn't have arrested Hagrid if he wasn't 100% certain that he was the guilty party.
I loved Ron's response. Like, no, I do know. And Harry's like,
Harry's
dude, we're not there.
Yeah,
we weren't there.
We were not there.
Stop that. My only comment on this was, so if you are doing a tally to make sure that Lockhart has some sort of smarminess in every chapter, check.
Absolutely. My next note, treacle fudge that Hagrid clearly made was used to glue Fang's teeth together to stop him from barking.
So now we have a purpose for the treacle fudge as opposed to like human consumption.
Yeah, human torture.
I wonder if you should get some of that here for your dog.
That's why I wrote this note.
That's really funny.
Oh, dire Poe. Now we get to the car. The forest has turned the car wild, and the car was acting like Ron's pet dog is kind of what it described it as. I kind of wish we got more with the car, like more interaction, being like why didn't they get in the car like right away?
Right.
Hey, you searched us out. You're probably going to help us out because you didn't run us over immediately.
Come here, dog. Come here, car.
Nothing. But
I think the car is very random.
Do you?
I do. I think the car is very random. Like, it showed up, but it didn't stick around. And then it, like, at the end, I know I'm jumping, but at the end, like, it saved them, and then it kicked their butts out.
Yeah.
Like, it just was like, I'm going to help you. I'm not going to help you. I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you. So more than a dog, it's almost like a cat.
It's a little bit bitter still.
It's almost like a cat.
It's a lot like a cat. Cats. But it almost feels a little bit like this was the Norbert, the Norwegian Ridgeback character, this book, where it's involved for a chapter, it serves a quick purpose, and then gets out again entirely.
Maybe.
So, I don't know, like it's just funny. I like the car. I like how it has a personality and it's surviving somehow.
Against all odds, including the lack of being an animate object.
And in the forest, we see spiders that are the size of cart horses. Aragog is described as being the size of a small elephant. These are gigantic. I think, and
yes.
We don't normally talk about the movie. They make them a little more fantastically huge in that movie, but
I don't know. I thought it was I don't know. I haven't watched it.
And
we'll
revisit that.
Okay,
but because I actually didn't remember them being only the size of horses, which are huge.
Huge.
Don't get me wrong.
Right,
but
bigger than humans.
They're definitely big enough to pick them up by their front pincers, their front hands.
Like, this whole scene just reminds me so much of Shelob and Samwise Gamgee. Almost in general. And so you can almost think of it as Harry and Ron are Frodo, and the car is Samwise Gamgee coming to save them from the big scary spider.
Yeah.
You go, Ford Anglia.
I wish Fang did more.
Fang,
we know he's a coward, but...
I mean, seriously, Hagrid's description of him at the beginning of the book, go ahead, but trust me, he's a coward. Like, that's true.
Yeah, at least he did. So the one thing he did do, he barked right when they couldn't see the car, but it was pulling up on him. So at least he's, he's got his dog ears going, a little more perceptive.
He's the lookout dog.
The spiders are described like the clicks of their pincers sounding like applause, except applause didn't usually make Harry feel sick with fear. That's an interesting description. I don't know.
I can see that. It's like being applauded by your worst nightmare. Right.
I think it goes to, it's a good way of backdoor describing how many spiders there would have to be for that droning sound to come out.
And a good way to explain the sound without saying the sound of it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool way of doing it, I think. I only have a couple more notes. Aragog mentions that attacking humans would normally be in the giant spider's nature.
Yes.
Good thing Hagrid's around, I guess, but he's not around right now.
Well, let's just stop and think. Why do we have a giant nest of a massive family of spiders, living next to a castle full of children?
Because Hagrid's in charge of the keeping of games.
We've done really good this book. Really, really good. We've really liked Hagrid.
This has been the first, this is the biggest one, though, of Hagrid neglecting his duties, or through his own personal over trustworthiness in these beasts.
Yes.
That it's just going to be okay. Just because it's okay for him, that it's okay for everybody.
Right.
It's that part that he's missing, that not everyone is as big and strong as he is, and as clearly capable with these large beasts that he is.
It's funny how I can take that and relate that to just people in general. How I'm trying to think of how to say it without doing a specific political or anything.
Sure.
But the way I see the world, I therefore feel that everybody should see the world the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not seeing it my way, it's because they're choosing not to see it my way. Even though their life experience or, their education, their upbringing, their health, their background, their...
So many X factors.
There's a reason why we're not all clones of each other, but it's very, very hard for a lot of people to really put themselves in other people's shoes. I don't mean in a moment of, in one bad moment, but in sort of the whole my world experience.
Yeah,
is
and that
so
absolutely goes both ways.
Different.
No matter what part of the political or
exactly.
or moral spectrum you are on, anything.
Yes.
It applies to you.
Because you have a very hard time of looking at whether I am, a crazy liberal white
9/10 of the battle.
Yes, a crazy liberal left winger, who doesn't understand how the gun toting, Confederate loving people. How could you care about the Confederate things? And then those people are like, well, what does it matter? Why don't you just pull yourselves up by your bootstraps? Why do I need, the pride marches and the Black Lives Matter? And I don't understand, because you don't know their story. You don't know their experience, both sides.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times people who try and affect the change are the people who are trying to see both sides.
Yeah.
But the people who aren't seeing both sides don't understand it.
Right. And so that person that's trying to see both sides is clearly a target.
Right.
Because you play both sides of the fence or whatever, and it's just...
Or not even both sides of the fence. It's trying to see, how do I bring everybody... And the word I always hear a lot is woke.
Yeah.
How do we get to that point where we can be woke to see the perspectives that are view? And I'm trying really hard to do it and not get my political perspective in there.
I'm going to just pull a real quick historical perspective
Thank you.
on I'm going to be real quick on this too. On probably where that came from. It probably comes from clans and the way human society has developed over the past several millennia, that you didn't have interactions with other groups nearly like we do today. I mean, there was plenty of interaction and things like that, but you didn't have to live together. You didn't have to work together. You didn't have to see what everyone's putting on social media. You didn't have to see the other side at all if you didn't want to. You could easily just stay isolated and you'd be fine. And so we're naturally attuned to be that way, that if you're different than me, you're probably an enemy. And so it's hard to turn that flight or fight off and instantly be, well, you're an enemy, so I have to fix you, or I have to fight you, or I have to isolate myself from you.
Right.
And the fixing you is a bad mentality. All three are bad mentalities, as opposed to, I want to learn about you.
And then how can I take what I know
because I'm not
and
perfect.
What you know and make it a combined new understanding.
Right. So I'll stop there, but I think that's a big part of where that human nature that's probably a bad term.
And to bring
but
back to Hagrid, he just doesn't see that other people don't see things like that.
Sure.
And in a very much more innocent kind of way.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a big theme in this book, with Malfoy and his pure blood versus Muggle-born, or even with Ernie thinking that Harry was the heir of Slytherin just because he could speak Parseltongue. There's a lot of that sort of innate biasness very, very subtly but it's in this book.
And Ron and Harry being afraid of the werewolves in the forest. They're normal people.
Oh my god.
Most of their time, they're normal people.
Werewolf bias. There you go. All kinds of stuff here.
Just because they have a
medical condition.
There you go. a magical malady that they're automatically these evil, hideous creatures. I don't know. It's a little much.
Right.
Aragog, they gave him the benefit of the doubt. He tried to eat them.
Which he did not give them the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. I see this is a very, very common theme in many different directions in this book.
Which is funny because I would not have caught... I've never caught this before.
Sure.
It's so...
The Draco one it's up front.
It is, but everything else is so...
subtle.
And I don't even know... Just following J.K. Rowling on Facebook and not Facebook, but Twitter, and she's such a political activist and was, she worked for Amnesty International before she wrote these books. That's just who she is as a person. I don't even know if she intended these littler pieces.
I think it's just naturally how she characterizes people.
What I was thinking.
And I don't mean that in a short, view of what she does,
yes.
But that's how she is predisposed to write characters.
Because of, which
I
think is fabulous because again, and I know I've talked about this before, it is such a great way to teach kids
inherent
about
biases
tolerance
of other people.
and without teaching them about tolerance.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a book about witchcraft. This is a book about
morality,
kind of, and just how we
coming of age.
Other people.
Yeah.
All right.
So one more final thought on that is J.K. does have the Lumos Foundation nowadays too, which this is the chapter where Lumos is actually created. So she's trying to bring light into the world.
Shout out to Lumos.
Yep. My final note is Wild Card to the rescue. It is kind of a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina of, we're pretty much about to be dead, and we just got saved.
Well, I almost see it as
here come the Eagles.
Oh, thank you, Eagles. I was really going with the cowboys and Indians, and the random horse rides up out of nowhere to drive them off into the sunset. Thanks, horse.
Yep. So that's all I've got this chapter. What notes do you have?
So we've talked about most of mine. They all kind of fit together. But at the beginning of the chapter, Malfoy kind of goes off on Hermione. And I really like that Ron was just immediately ready to fight Malfoy to defend Hermione's honor. Now, in no way should he, because not only will he get in trouble, he'll probably kill somebody with his backfiring wand, which is still not repaired. By the way, just throwing that out there. But I really like that he was right there. There was no, kind of letting it slide because she wasn't no, this is my friend and you can't say that about my friend, which I really appreciated.
Yep, definitely.
My question is it unnatural for spiders to travel in a single file line? They make a big deal about it, but is it really that?
So I think that's meant to basically show you that there's some kind of order to what they're doing, which would be the weird thing. We see ants doing that. They march in single file lines and everything like that back to their anthills. But spiders, most spider species, that's a tough
phrase to say.
Most spider species are they're recluse. They're solitary. There are several species that do nest and group
Aragog.
up. So clearly he's one of those.
Right.
I'll say maybe a wolf spider. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially because they was described as being hairy and things. Wolf spiders they're gross. But I think it's mainly supposed to show you that it's pretty obvious that something's weird because I think that's not typical.
Okay. All right. So then the boys are very scared in this chapter, as they should be, because it's giant spiders. But I kind of don't feel so bad for Harry, mostly because he's scared but poor Ron.
Yeah.
This is literally his worst fear. Nothing else after this from the rest of his life is ever going to be as bad as this moment right here. Because even if he's, facing certain death at the hands of another wizard or something, that's nothing compared to the fact that he literally has faced giant man-eating spiders.
Yeah. There's a description of Ron. Oh, it says, Harry fell to the ground on all fours as the spider released him. Ron and Fang thudded next to him. Fang wasn't howling anymore, but cowering silently on the spot. Ron looked exactly like Harry felt. His mouth was stretched wide in a kind of silent scream, and his eyes were popping.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's so terrified that he just can't even. Like, he can't make a sound. But that dread and just fear is dripping from his face.
And really, the conversation with Aragog, it's completely Harry who talks.
Yeah.
Ron doesn't say anything at all.
Until they see the car.
Even then, Ron doesn't talk.
No?
No, Ron doesn't talk at all. Ron doesn't, and even in the car, like, as they were driving away, Harry looked sideways at Ron. His mouth was still open in the silent scream, but his eyes weren't popping anymore. Are you okay? Ron stared straight ahead, unable to speak. Ron doesn't speak again until
Harry wakes him up.
No, until after they get back to Hagrid's cabin. Ron throws up and he says, "Follow the spiders. I'll never forgive Hagrid. We're lucky to be alive." True.
Reasonable.
I mean, we're talking how long of just complete sheer terror, panic.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of leads to... Well, I'm going to talk about Aragog first. So Aragog gives some good info, right? About the girl who died and some other things, but he can't tell them what the monster is. Like, you can't help a guy out. It's there again.
Yeah.
Like, just...
anything.
Right.
Anything.
Something.
The being too afraid of something to being able to talk about it is so silly to me. I don't get that.
I think that ties right back into that big conversation we had before, though. It's easier to just pretend it doesn't exist or not talk about it or avoid it or ignore it than it is to confront something hard, to have that hard conversation of whatever it is that you're afraid of.
But even if you're afraid of it, can you still not recite a fact about it? You don't have to start thinking about it and emotionally get yourself to that point where you're actually thinking about what it is. You could save people's lives by just saying... True. It is a whatever it is.
But I don't think Aragog cares about saving people's lives.
Well, that's fine. But I think even with like the Voldemort thing,
I know
I
can't believe you're not saying his name.
Like, really? You can't. I mean, I just said his name.
Nope, nothing's coming to get you.
We're fine in this in the studio here. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a little overdone.
All right. So my last note is, as the car was coming to save them and they get in the car, Ron never got in the car.
Yeah, it's understood.
It is understood, but technically it never says he gets in the car. So this is what it says. The car screeched to a halt in front of Harry and Ron, and the doors flew open. "Get Fang!" Harry yelled, diving into the front seat. Ron seized the boarhound around the middle and threw him, yelping, into the back of the car. The doors slammed shut. Ron didn't touch the accelerator, but the car didn't need him. The engine roared, and they were off, hitting more spiders.
So he didn't touch the accelerator because he was still outside the car.
Right. So, I mean, I get the idea is Harry jumped in, but did Ron jump in and then grab the boarhound and throw him in after him? I picture it as Ron grabbing the boarhound, throwing him in, and then Ron should climb in. But I didn't, I don't know. I needed one more detail there.
Sure. I think once it says that, he didn't touch the accelerator, that's an understood, way of saying he's in the front seat.
I know, but Harry gets a special he dived in.
Maybe he grabs Fang, throws him in the back seat, like kind of between the front seats, like in the front door. And then basically with that is just in himself. So he doesn't go to the back door. He throws him in through the front door into the back of the car.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
between the seats.
Over the back.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
That's my justification.
All right, I'll give you that.
Hey guys, have you ever used audible.com? If not, you should check it out using our special affiliate link at www.thepodcastthat.com/support-us. Follow that link to Audible, start your free trial, and get Stephen King's It for free so that you can float down here with us going chapter by chapter. I also recommend checking out the Kindle version with WhisperSync. It's a great tool that we on the podcast use to take our notes, while also listening to the audiobook simultaneously. Thanks for supporting the show, and always stay imaginary.
All right, Luke, let's get into your 5 burning questions.
Question 1. So, if Riddle caught the wrong person, i.e. not Hagrid, who did open the Chamber of Secrets?
I don't know.
There goes our only suspect.
I don't know. Was Malfoy at school at that time? Was there
Mr. Malfoy?
Yeah, Lucius or his dad? Or was it, I don't know, Voldemort hiding in the curtains somewhere doing it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's just not enough information. We don't have a bad guy yet.
Right, yeah.
There's just no bad guy that I can point a finger at and be like, it was that guy.
Which, I mean, we've had a couple suspects that have been clearly proven innocent.
Right.
So there's been a couple, finger pointings
Yes.
to do, but
Yes.
nothing that is continuing as he's been a suspect the whole time. So, question 2. Do you think the boys will run straight to Moaning Myrtle and ask her about her death?
I think they should.
But
will they?
Do you think Harry and Ron will?
No, because they didn't run right to Hagrid to ask him about what happened when he got expelled. Like, they're really good at putting off those difficult conversations.
Because it makes more interesting plots when you get to them.
If Hermione had been there, she'd probably find a way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I think.
Question 3. Would Snape be a good headmaster?
No.
No?
No. He's too biased against students.
Yeah.
Like, I think, he might have really good skills that would make him good at a lot of the parts of being a headmaster, but he's just not nice to people.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be nicer to people. Now, on the other hand, as a teacher, sometimes I want the principal to be the big, bad, scary guy.
Sure.
So that would be kind of fun.
Do you want to go to the principal's office?
No,
I'll
please, I will
up.
do whatever you want me to do.
I will stop sticking my gum underneath the chair.
Right, whatever it is that you're telling me not to do, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to go see the guy. That he would be useful for. But just in general, walking around the school, yeah.
Yeah. Question 4. Should Ron have forgiven Ernie quicker?
I wouldn't have. I probably would be just as annoyed with him.
A bit spiteful, just because,
right.
You know what? You put yourself in this position.
Right.
You deserve a little bit of...
Although, here's what's funny. So, one of the reasons Ron is kind of distrustful of Ernie and is kind of mad at him is because he starts thinking it's Malfoy. And Ron's like, dude, that's so 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Except that's exactly what Ron and Harry did. They immediately jumped to thinking it was Malfoy. So Ernie didn't do anything different than what they themselves had done.
Mm-hmm.
So he should forgive Ernie quicker. But if I were him, I wouldn't. Because that's just human nature.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
So I see an interesting foil between these 3 Hufflepuffs being Justin Finch-Fletchley, Hannah Abbott, and Ernie Macmillan, and our hero trio. They've got the one boy that grew up in a Muggle family.
Yep.
Harry. You've got a
boy from the old wizarding family, Ernie.
We're at least led to believe that he's
right. Yes.
been in the wizarding world for a long time.
Yes.
Hannah Abbott, we don't have any reason to think that she's not intelligent or anything like that. So we don't get a lot of it, but it is a pretty, because all 6 of them were paired up at the beginning of herbology, I think. And it's just interesting to see that. And now it's almost like the 2 remaining from the Hufflepuff group are getting the same conclusions once their own prejudices and biases are out of the way against Harry.
Yes.
They're getting the same conclusions that our hero trio was at, months ago. But
right. So they're 6 months behind.
Yeah,
but it's not like they didn't have a good idea at first.
Right.
I mean, Harry was a reasonable suspect.
Absolutely.
Based on what they knew and the information they had.
Except for the Colin Creevey one. That one, Harry was in the hospital wing. I mean, that...
True, but nobody knew if he could get up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You could maybe sneak out of the hospital wing. You're not supervised. You don't have to get through out of a...
I mean, yeah, I could. Sure.
Well, I wouldn't because I'm a nice person, but you would. And Harry would. So it's possible.
Sure.
Okay.
Final question of chapter 15. How is the car surviving in the forest?
Natural resources.
He just found a...
Oil well.
He's fracking out there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't need...
I think we touched on
gas
this.
Once you've become sentient.
Sure. Yeah. Or maybe that's part of Mr. Weasley's magic that he did to it. The gas automatically refills or something.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that one.
We haven't seen much magic like that, but I think it's reasonable that you could increase the quantity of something and just basically have it keep refilling so you never actually run out.
Yes. All right. All right, Luke, what is your favorite line?
My favorite line is... But Lockhart's disgusting cheeriness, his hints that he had always thought Hagrid was no good, his confidence that the whole business was not at an end, irritated Harry so much that he yearned to throw Gadding with Ghouls right in Lockhart's stupid face.
Lockhart does have a stupid face.
Stupid face.
Get your stupid face.
That's like a childish way of, I just want to throw my book at your stupid face. Your face is stupid.
This is when my 4-year-old would say, you said a bad word. You said stupid. That's a bad word. That's like a shut up word.
Yeah. So that was my favorite line.
My favorite line was from Ron. And they're in the forest, and Harry does our first meeting of the Lumos spell, and Ron says,
I'd like mine too, but it'd probably blow up or something.
Yeah,
You're
it probably
right.
would. Get a new wand.
Yeah.
That's all.
How is this not fixed?
I don't know. All right, Luke, who was your MVP?
My chapter MVP was the Ford Anglia. I really liked the characterization, the personification that the car has gone through. Clearly living in the forest would be an experience.
Could you live in the car in the forest? Could you live in the car in the forest?
Sure.
If it let you.
If you were pals,
True. Yes.
And he saves the day. He's there to save them when they needed and light the way when they first found him. So
okay.
How about you? Who was your honorable mention?
Well, it's interesting. This doesn't happen very often, but I too picked the Ford Anglia because they'd literally be dead without him.
Yeah.
Without the car, they would have died.
Yeah.
Most of us can't say that we would be dead if it weren't for a car. Some of us can say we would be dead because of a car, but you were not saved by a car.
Right.
They were. I think that's awesome.
Yep, I agree.
Wraps it up for this week. Feel free to join us on Twitter at Not Named Podcast. We can be emailed at the podcast that must not be named. We even have a website that we dare you to try called thepodcastthat.com, where you can find this episode and all of our episodes of this podcast and our family of podcasts, including the podcast that drinks and knows things.
Subscribe, like, rate, and leave a comment for us on iTunes or on YouTube, where we have all of our episodes and videos.
Join us next week as we recap chapters 11 through 15, and then in 2 weeks when we hit on chapter 16.
The Chamber of Secrets. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.